Hey y'all, it's Queen Vine,
And I'm Rogelio.
and we're with Gender Talk for Youth by Youth. And we're with Mr. Matthew Klieman, and today we're going to be talking with him about his upcoming journey as a congressional candidate. Ooh, so how was your morning today?
It's been good. It's better getting to know you all and be here with you, but it's been good. How about yours?
It's good.
It's been all right. Yeah, like I'm still waking up, but like I'm here. You know.
Yeah.
Do y'all drink coffee yet? Is that something
Absolutely not.
Sometimes
y'all do?
someone told me that that coffee actually makes you short. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's true. Is that true?
I didn't drink it till I was already 6'9", so I don't know.
Oh.
Oh man.
Well, you're not gonna go anymore.
I drink tea. I don't drink
I drink
coffee.
tea too.
All right.
So let's get into it. Who is Mr. Matthew Klieman?
Man, starting with the tough questions. So I'll try to keep it brief because I don't want to spend all day talking. But so I grew up in Overland Park, Kansas.
Mhm.
I got really tall really quickly. Realized I needed to play some sports. Was fortunate enough to have an opportunity to walk on at the University of Kansas to play basketball.
Yes.
So I went to KU from 2004 to 2009. I won a national championship there. And when I was studying in school, I studied architecture. And I'll never forget Coach Self one day kind of went around the room and he kind of pointed out what everyone's pro prospects were. And he gets to me and he kind of looks at me and goes, and then he went to the next one. He skipped over to me. And I realized I needed to get a job. So I went from architecture and I graduated in the recession in 2009. So nobody was getting jobs. So I went to graduate school. And I thought because I'd played sports and I had, studied architecture that the next logical step would be to design sports stadiums.
Okay.
And so I was studying urban design in St. Louis and get to travel the world, got to see a lot of different places. Came back to Kansas City and worked on a number of projects, big projects. But I saw whether it was a stadium or another project, sometimes neighborhoods get torn down. And there wasn't anybody doing the work to sort of build them up. At least I didn't see that. And you don't get that job coming out of school to build up communities. You don't get the degree building up communities. Like that's not what we train people to do. And so I was really passionate about how can I be in service to communities. So I started teaching at the University of Kansas School of Architecture. And when we were looking for projects, we were hearing from folks in Wyandotte County that there was a lot of need in different spaces. And we met with a group and they were meeting with a neighborhood group and they said, well, we're trying to build a better park over at Bethany Park. And we said, oh, cool. Who's your architect? And they said, well, architect, why would we need an architect? And that was the moment where the light bulb kind of clicked for us. Like we can listen to what communities want and need and help translate their ideas into real things and make them real. And so I started doing that work about 10 years ago in Wyandotte County. And we started a group called Dot Agency. We even had a grant called Connecting the Dots. So hearing that come back is fun. And we were going to neighborhood meetings, going to church groups, listening to what the community would say that they wanted. So we heard in the Northeast area here in KCK, there's not a grocery store. And we went out and bought and built a mobile grocery store called Dot Mobile Grocer that serves communities around here that bring in fresh, affordable food into food deserts. We met with kids at Emmy Pearson Elementary. They had a community garden that was, it had a tool shed, but it kept getting broken into and people would steal it. And they wanted a learning classroom environment. So we asked the kids what they wanted. We met with them. They designed with us. We call that participatory design. But it's this idea that design can sort of be democratic, right? Everybody has a voice. Everybody has something that they care about. And so we asked them to participate with us. And we went out and designed and built this, little tree house of a tool shed. We built a space down at 6th Street by the Third Friday Art Walk. I don't know if y'all been there before. But it was a small business incubator for a refugee stitching company who wanted to get off the ground, but they couldn't afford a full year's lease. So we built a small shipping container to house them. And so I was doing all these projects, but it felt like every time we have a new semester, right, a new class, we had to sort of start over. We couldn't really ever take on the bigger issues. And I really wanted to be a part of systemic change. You can do small things, but like how do we do it so we don't have to do it every single time? How can we make the systems work a little bit better? How do we design laws and policies so that we don't have to build a mobile grocery store? Maybe we actually just have a grocery store come up organically. And so I went to different nonprofits. I worked for a local nonprofit called Youth Build, where I trained young people how to build affordable housing I went to go work for a food nonprofit called Nourish KC, where we were working on food access. Went to go work for Children's Mercy. So we were trying to get young children to be active and work on improving parks across the city, really. And then I came to the health department during COVID, and I worked on the health department. We were actually setting up access to COVID resources, but not just shots and vaccines and COVID tests, but also access to blood pressure checks, eyeglass prescriptions, getting people free food. Doing that work has been my whole career in the last 10 years. It's been a career of public service. And as recently as about a year and a half ago, I joined Vibrant Health, which is it's a federally qualified health center, kind of like a clinic for folks who maybe don't have insurance or have not very good insurance. And so we provide healthcare services. But we recognize that if somebody's coming to us and say they got their kid and the kid's got asthma, they come to Vibrant Health, we say, here's an inhaler, but then we're going to send you back home to an apartment that has mold. That's not enough. So we started working on how do we develop the community to improve health in the first place. So my job right now, we're developing a clinic over at 13th and Parallel, just down the street from here.
Oh, okay.
But about a month and a half ago, 50 days ago, I launched a campaign for Congress, for the United States House of Representatives. So that's the national level. And I got invited to do that by the Kansas Democratic Party, partially because of all the community work I've been doing, partially because of all the relationships I've been building. And it's really about three things. It's about building up our communities, which I have experience doing. It's about increasing access to care, whether that's health care, child care, senior care, mental health. And it's about protecting our rights and freedoms. There's a lot of things that the Supreme Court's doing right now, and Congress would do if it's more conservative and extreme, that would take away people's rights. And I want to make sure that we protect those rights. So that's why I'm running for Congress, and that's directly related to my experience here in Wyandotte County.
All right. So going back to like the architect part, is that something you always wanted to do like ever since high school?
Yeah.
Because I know that like, as you said, like being an architect, it got you to like where you are now. So is that like something you've always wanted to do?
Yes.
That's a good question. So when I was young, you know, when you're like a little in grade school, they have you like on those three rule sheets, fill out like what your dream is, right? What
Yeah.
you're going to be. So
remember
I remember writing something, and I remember not exactly, but my mom saved it for years. And I remember seeing it like when I was in college, and I was like, oh, okay. And it was, I want to bring people together in space to make a better community. Like I was saying something like that. And at the time I was like, oh, bring people together in big spaces, like stadiums, right? And so like in my head, I was always thinking like that. But I remember when I was how old are y'all?
16.
16.
So when I was your age, I had a crush on a girl. She was in art. She was a painter. And so I thought, I'm gonna be a painter so I could take classes with her.
So you trying to like
It didn't
impress
work.
her.
It
That's
didn't work.
smart, though,
So,
bro.
but see, my art teacher told me, he goes, Matt, you're not a very good painter, but you have a good eye. You're technical. You think technically. And he goes, well, why don't you look at architecture in college? Because you might actually do better there. You have some talent, just not enough to be a painter. But architecture, that might be your thing. And I had a friend who was a year ahead of me, and he had done architecture school at KU. And so I just jumped right in. And I didn't realize how hard it would be. Architecture is one of the most demanding things you can do in college, because it's actually at KU and a lot of places it's a master's level degree, which means it's more intense. But you started as a freshman. And I did that and played basketball at the same time.
Oh.
So I never forget.
So you
but
was on real coffee. You was on coffee all the time.
See, I didn't do coffee. What I did was naps.
Oh.
But what I remember, we played a basketball game against Villanova when I was at KU, and we got beat. I mean, we got beat. Back like I used to beat Coach Mo and the Wolves back in the day. We got beat. We got beat by 30,
Look at him over there
and we came back to to Lawrence at about 3 a.m. because we got snowed in, and it was a Sunday night or Monday night, and I remember thinking, I got work to do. I got class homework. I got to be in studio, which is what we called like the lab for doing architecture. And so I was walking up the hill in the middle of a blizzard up to campus, and Coach Self, the head coach at KU, pulls up and says, Matt, can I get you a ride home? And I'm like, I'll get in, but you got to take me to class. It was at 3 a.m.
Ooh.
And so he drops me off at class, And then I go and do my work for, the morning, and I come back at noon and go take a nap, and I go to practice later that day. And he's just celebrating like, hey, Matt's a hard worker. Matt's doing this work, and I didn't tell him I took a nap. I was just like, he thought I'd been up the whole day.
So it was kind of hard, like balancing school while playing sports.
It was very hard, but it trained me to be efficient. It trained me to use my creativity to get things done faster. I had to learn skills.
Absolutely.
So when I learned like a software, I would learn it fast
Wow.
because I only have like 1 day a week to actually do the work.
So can you give like advice to like the youth and like youth athletes on how to like manage their time, balance school, sports, and all of that?
I think the first thing I'd say is if your head's not right, nothing's going to be right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people I played sports with, guys who played in the league, guys that played with LeBron, who struggled with mental health. Like they really struggled. Something with their mom, something with their girlfriend, something where they miss a shot and they wouldn't let it. They wouldn't forget it. And I would just say to any young person, like, you need to be able to be at peace with yourself, so you can kind of clear out some of those distractions. And a lot of guys I played with, like, that's what the court was. That's what the gym was. It was like a sanctuary. They could get away from some of the challenges that they had. But that doesn't mean you still can't work on them. So I would say before you even worry about school or relationships, I think that you got to make sure that you're right with yourself. But then once you are in that space, you just got to chip away at it. I mean, nobody won the game winner shot by just showing up and shooting the shot. They shot 10,000 shots every year to be prepared for that one moment.
Right.
And so that means you just got to keep chipping away at it. And success does not come overnight. It's rewarded by those who put in the work. And so what it takes is it takes a lot of practice. Championships are won at practice. And for folks who are wanting to be great, they don't realize the great ones put in that work. And I know firsthand that what separates me from guys that played in the league, I spend my free time in school. I spend my free time earning a degree so I could go work. Granted, my career has taken me a very different direction than what I expected at the time, but that's okay. But it's being flexible. It's making sure that you don't. Sometimes we self-sabotage. We get too caught up in our own heads about, like, I don't want to be scared of the moment, so I'm just going to avoid it all.
Oh yeah, that's what I do. Like
And that's that part about the mental health. It's about making sure that you recognize what's in front of you, and you say, hey, I'm not going to swallow. I'm not going to. There's a saying I always heard. It's called swallow the frog. It's like you're not going to be able to just go right in and get it right the first time. You gotta do the hard thing first thing in the morning and just keep chipping away at it.
So another question I have is, what measures will you take to improve mental health services and support for young people, for the youth?
So there's a lot of things. In the work that I do currently at Vibrant Health, in my day job, we have behavioral health support. I know that there are folks in our community that have been more advocating for mental health support, especially in sports, youth sports. There's ways that coaches and parents can be trained on how to talk about mental health and not to minimize it, not to dismiss it. But as a congressional candidate, there are federal things we can do too. There are ways that we can provide more resources so that we have mental health embedded in our society. I'll give you an example. Representative Sharice Davids, she represents Johnson County and the south half of Wyandotte County. My district would be the north half and a bunch of other parts in eastern Kansas. She just got $750,000 to support first responders, which is our law enforcement and fire and EMTs and paramedics, to have a co-responder. So that is somebody who has mental health training. And getting mental health into those spaces might be the difference of somebody who's going through a crisis being confronted with a police officer who's armed and doesn't really know what to expect versus somebody who's trained there in trauma-informed care. And they're able to really listen to somebody and identify what the issue is and help sort of de-escalate it. And that is a mental health service that's paid by the federal government. That requires federal laws to set aside those resources. I'll give you just a different example. I was talking to my uncle the other night. He's a farmer down in Oklahoma. Farmers have one of the highest suicide rates in the country as a job And he was talking about how the 988 hotline and some of those resources out there, people destigmatizing mental health, talking more about how people struggle with anxiety and depression and trauma. I think doing that and then linking that to federal dollars, because I'll tell you right now, our local city, counties, and our states, we don't have all this money just rolling in it. Sometimes we do need access to more resources to help us build a better community. And so from access to mental health care, it's bringing some of those federal dollars back home. That means we need to have somebody who's advocating for us, saying, this is what we care about. Let's make sure that we get it back into the hands of the folks that are really doing the work.
Would you do like community events, like just to like one, get like more money, two, to like get everybody together, and like
Do community events frequently, and there's certainly quite a few. I was at a neighborhood meeting that's doing some organizing work just 2 nights ago. It's one of those things that people, we exist in silos. We're so separated from each other, but there are many community groups doing the work. The challenges are, how do we make it sustainable, and how do we actually show progress? The experience I had in architecture was we've built trust with our community here in Wyandotte County because people could see something change. And I think that's one of the reasons why young people and folks sort of get disenfranchised with politics, is they hear all these promises, but they don't realize that the wheels of justice, the wheels of progress turn slowly, but they do turn. So you elect somebody in November of a year, they write a bill the following year that gets sidelined for 1 year and puts in a committee the next year, and then they finally approve it, but that doesn't go into the budget until the following year, which allocates resources for a year later for an organization to apply for at the end of that year, and then all of a sudden now they got that money. So if you're watching the system work, you're saying, well, why'd nothing change? I elected that person. I voted for that person. Why'd nothing change? It's the way our country works is things take time, but they do happen. And my experience has been when you work with people and you let them see the process, even if it's slow, they understand that progress is happening.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be doing more of that translation so we can say, hey, this is something we're working towards. It's going to take some time, but trust me, it'll get better. And I think a lot of people don't see that, and they just get really upset that nothing's happening.
All right. So, so you said you work with Vibrant Health, right? So how will you like ensure that the youth's voices are still heard in terms of like mental health or like just healthcare in general? Is there like different like programs within the Vibrant Health initiative that you specifically work with?
I'm glad you asked that question.
Right.
And we did not script this. There's no scripting questions here. I'm learning this the first time. So.
All right, yeah, because I say like I too struggle with like mental health, so like this is an important topic for me too.
Well, I started an internship earlier this spring. We had internship applications. We went to local schools. We formed about 1.5 years ago an advisory council made up of residents and community members. Anybody can participate. Y'all can participate. Meets on the second Monday evening of every month. It's called Vibrant Community Advisory Board, a Vibrant Community Advisory Council. And they told us they wanted young people. But one of the philosophies I have, it's not unique to me, but it's meeting people where they are. You can show up and do your own thing, but if nobody knows about it, no one's going to come. So we went to where the people are. We went to this local schools. And so we went to Wyandotte High School and Sumner High School because those are the schools in the Northeast area, and we're organizing with a Northeast area community. We created this internship for 11 weeks. We paid the students $600 over those 11 weeks. It was a paid internship. On their early release days on Wednesday afternoons, they came to us, and they learned about community development. We had 18 high school sophomores and juniors learning about community development, and they were getting trained on how to increase access to healthy food, how to improve their parks, how to improve local buildings and storefronts so that we can, support business development in corridors. And they developed these little zines. Y'all know what a zine is?
No.
So it's like a little booklet. It's like a little, like if you took paper and printed information and folded it in half and stapled it. It's like a little simple booklet.
Like a little, like, what's it called? Like a pamphlet?
Yeah, like a pamphlet. Exactly.
Yeah.
So they did their own pamphlets, and they printed these off and shared them. We did this through the Diploma Plus program. So they got internship credit through Vibrant Health. That was paid internship. And when we did this, I remember there was a young girl who said, we had elected officials come. We did a simulator where they got to pretend like they were me for a day, basically. And so they'd go talk to neighborhood leaders who pretended to be they were the nonprofit, or they were the community group, or they were the elected official. And then they got to do their project, and they got to present it back to those folks, and they had to say, well, here's what we want to see in our community. Here's what it's going to take. Would you support it? And then they got some training on that. And the next week, we had actual elected officials come, and they talked about everything from access to mental health. They talked about homeless, advocating for a homeless population, because we don't have a homeless shelter in Wyandotte County. We don't have permanent supportive housing programs as much as we need. And one of the young girls said, why Wyandotte? She said to the elected official, like, why Wyandotte? Why should I invest in this community? And I think that's the thing that I've worked with youth for a while now, and there is this feeling that Wyandotte's not getting enough. And I talk about this when I'm out talking to folks, not just in Wyandotte. I'm talking about this with folks in Topeka, Pittsburgh, Emporia, that the single best export, which means the things we're shipping away from Kansas, is our creative, talented, bright youth. We are not creating an environment where people feel like they can establish lives here, that they feel like they can find good paying jobs, that they can someday afford to buy a house, that they can take care of their families. We're not doing enough of that. And so part of my campaign, when I talk about it, is we're trying to build a future that we can all be a part of. And some of that's about tackling climate change. Some of that's about tackling mental health issues. But it takes having laws that support that. My background at Vibrant Health was in the social determinants of health, which is this idea that your health, only about 20% of it is decided by what your doctor tells you. It's also decided by your education. It's also decided by your job. It's decided by your neighborhood. And that's where I entered as somebody with a background in architecture, was how do we improve the neighborhoods? But what I have realized is that all of that exists within a legal framework, right? So the laws that shape our environments, the laws that shape our jobs and our education, that has a big influence. And so that's the kind of work that I'm passionate about. But I think, to your point about other opportunities, we went into Sumner. We didn't just have them come to us as interns. We did a whole class with Sumner architecture students in Mr. Jeremy Todd's class, and they got to design their clinic. And so they got to design in architecture class in high school the kind of clinic that they would go to. And so they were adding coffee shops and bookstores, and they were adding little things to the building, and then they got to present them back to the community. And so I've been trying to create opportunities for young people, because this is their community too, and I want them to see that they can be a part of it.
Right.
Oh, so with climate change, how do you plan to involve young people in the fight against climate change and environmental protection?
I think there are young people already involved. Right next door, Groundwork NRG does great work with their green team. There are groups across the region, across the country. If you look them up, one of them is called Sunrise Movement that does a lot of work with young people. Environmental justice is affecting frontline communities. And what I mean by that is, if you were to drive down the street from here, you would see the Jersey Creek. The Jersey Creek is a big creek that empties out into the Kansas and Missouri rivers. But along that creek, there are sewers that dump out into it, and it releases air and water issues. So the city's trying to repair that. But if you look closely, there are oil refineries, there are smokestacks, there are chemical companies, there are heavy industry. These things should not be in neighborhoods. Now, that existed a long time ago, but repairing that, addressing that, requires justice. So I used to work, when we were at Youth Build, we would do park cleanups, and I'd ask the young people, do you see what the signs say? And the signs say, don't touch the water, because it's toxic, it's dangerous. And when we were doing a basketball court renovation project, we worked with kids down at Avenue of Life in a STEAM camp, so science, technology, engineering, math. We ran a camp. They helped us design a basketball court. We're now building that basketball court at 7th and Walker. So I've involved young people in the process. The challenge is sometimes, you all know this, is when you're in school and you got homework and you might have a job and you got sports teams, y'all are busy. It's creating opportunities for y'all to plug in, but also recognizing that folks who have an interest in these careers, I think that's the future. Whether it's solar panels or wind turbines. I'm on a board of an organization called the Climate and Energy Project. We're advocating for statewide policy to create more clean energy so that we can lower our utility bills. And I think young people who recognize that like their families are affected by this, right? Like
Right.
BPU has utility bills and their families are paying into that. You can show up to a BPU meeting today and talk about what it means to you to have clean energy in your community, because that will lower the cost of electricity. The federal government just passed one of the biggest clean energy bills in the history of our country. It was called the Inflation Reduction Act, but it set aside money for clean energy. So in the clinic I'm working on, we're going after grant dollars that can lower the cost of our utilities. We can reduce the amount of carbon we're releasing into the environment. Does it solve climate change? No. But what we're trying to do, and what everyone in this space is trying to do, is to build more resilient communities. So when we know that climate change creates extreme weather environments, if a tornado comes through here, if we got flooding, if we got some really bad electrical storms and our power goes out, where do people go? Where do they go to get access to the things they need to survive? And we need to create more institutional support so our communities can find those resources in the moment of crisis so that people aren't hurt. I think that's a thing where young people can be engaged, but they have to find where that they fit in. And usually it's as advocates. And I'll tell you this, and I'll stop talking about it, but the two of you, with the platform you have right now, are more powerful than I am in some respects. Because what you have is the audience. What you all have is the opportunity to speak truth to people and say, hey, this is stuff that we care about. I'm 38. How old are y'all?
16.
Okay. So I got more than 20 years on you. If you educate yourself today about the issues that you're going to have to work on, and don't let yourself get too demoralized, don't let yourself get too scared by it, but really find, like, there's, in any situation, y'all can do the work, but you got 20 years ahead of me. And you can chip away at it for 20 years and be much further along the road than I am. And so just know that as young people, when you all show up to a city council meeting, you could go up to UG and get on the mic every week and say, this is my community, I care about it, and bring 10 of your friends. And I guarantee you, if you each brought 10 friends, you got 22 young people at a city council meeting on a microphone saying, this is what I want in my community, and this is what you're going to do. Everybody will listen. I'm serious. Everybody will listen. So just don't discount. I know it's scary. I know it's intimidating, but y'all have a lot more power as young people than you think.
Yeah, but and sometimes it's like hard also because some adults don't want to listen to the youth. They're like, oh, I'm older. I know what's going on. I know all of this, yada, yada, yada. It's like the generational trauma that you give us, it's like we're trying to change that. Like, we want the ability, we want you guys to hear us. Like, we just want change. And we want the ability to, like, have our voices heard. And, like, as I said, it's very hard because, like, nobody wants to listen to us. But there's that many people that do want to listen to us. And, like, if we all come together, it's like, we got it. Like, we could outdo them. Be like, oh yeah, we got it. We could get change. Like, so
yeah, we really want the adults to, like, really put their trust in us to get our voices heard out there, to see like what they so they can hear what we want to see in our community, like the benefits and everything. Cause
like we trust them so much, but it's like they don't trust us. Yeah. And it's like how you say you want change for us, but you not showing it. Like, your actions speak louder than words.
So what I would say is, first, learn how to organize. Organizing is the process of getting people in place to build power. All right. And when I say that, I mean power is having 20 to 30 young people show up with pamphlets, knocking on doors and saying, we're here to demand change. And you learn the tactics and the strategies. You learn how to get in front of the media. You learn how to do what y'all are already doing. And you are strategic about that. And there are groups around our city who are really, really good at that. And we can talk more afterwards. But learn how to organize. Doesn't mean you have to be an organizer, but learn what those strategies are so you are aware of them. Recognize that nothing has ever been given away. Change takes demand. Change takes building power. Change takes showing up. And being an accessible resource and sharing what your knowledge is and what your perspective is. And a lot of folks, I think, got lost in this trap that social media was going to create change. And social media is not the same as having boots on the ground. Social media is not going to suffice for the changes that we need to see in our country. I will say also, though, that, and this is my experience, is that you as young people have a unique ability to do something that most people don't even know exists, which is, you ever heard of this term called the Overton window?
No.
So imagine a window of what's possible.
Yeah.
And elected leaders are trying to work in that space of that window being open. They're going to do what is politically possible, what they can afford, and what they know that people want.
Yeah.
And as young people, you may not have the power to be in that leadership position necessarily. 16, 17 years old, you may not be the mayor or the governor or the president. But what you can do is, as advocates building power, you can open that window just a little bit more. Keep inching it up. Keep pushing it open so that the things you want to see are more possible, because they know that if you all organize enough people, they may not get reelected. You organize enough people, they may get a lot of bad media attention. They don't want to be seen as against the young people. So your job is to advocate for a better world that opens up a range of possibilities that are more possible for what we want to see. Now, as you get more advanced, you get degrees, you get, families, you start paying taxes, you start doing the work of being an adult. That's where those leadership positions will start popping up. And if you have a voice and you care about your community, and I mean this sincerely, if you really care about your community, you will find yourself being in a space where they're asking you to be the mayor, they're asking you to be the governor, they're asking you to be the president.
Yeah.
What have you done back home? Like, have you went back home and did like what you're doing right now in Wyandotte County?
So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. Been
Absolutely.
advocating for community issues, whether that's changing policy on transportation. I used to serve on the Total Transportation Policy Committee at Mid-America Regional Council. People don't even know that exists, but that's a group that advocates for transit, changed the policy years ago in the surface transportation to create more funding opportunities for bike lanes. I have worked on a number of issues at a local level, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's healthcare access. It's trying to create the systems, and that stuff takes time. But a lot of what I've also done is the more tangible work. And so I'm very proud of that work, but I also know it's hard work.
Yeah.
And I was going to say this earlier, but you can have the community caring about an issue, and things may not get done if an elected official doesn't listen. You may have an elected official who cares about it with you, and things may not get done because there's no investment. What we're lacking in Wyandotte County, when Brown v. Board desegregated schools, we saw what we call the white flight. We saw white, wealthy families leave Wyandotte County, and they took with them capital. They took with them jobs. They took with them businesses.
Yeah.
That's when Johnson County grew, was when Wyandotte County started to fall off the map. We lost a ton of people. From 1960 till about 1980, 1990, we lost about 30,000 people. 30,000 people for a city that was continually growing just dropped. What's brought it back is immigration. What's brought it back is more people from around the world coming to Wyandotte County, because our infrastructure cannot pay for itself. And if it wasn't for immigration in Wyandotte County, we have 65 languages spoken in our public school system.
Wow.
We have a lot of diversity in our community, and that's our strength. Because if we didn't have that, our community might not be being able to maintain the roads and the streetlights and the housing.
Yeah.
We need more people. We need more density in this community to lower our taxes and to have more services. But that means we need to have more people coming in than leaving. And so that's why we need to have an environment where young people don't ask the question, why Wyandotte? They say, Wyandott's my home and I want to reinvest in here.
Absolutely.
Right. So if or when you're elected, what are like your plans what policies do you plan to implement, whether that's like talking about the educational system or like the economical system, because we're talking about like decreasing taxes, or like maybe decreasing groceries, decreasing home prices, or even talking about like going back to like environment prices, like all that costs money to like build a park or like clean water. What's like your vision for like the system in general for Wyandotte County?
Y'all are asking the easy questions. So I'll tell you.
So at first it was hard, but now it's easy.
No, I was being very sarcastic. This is good. This is the kind of thing that I alluded to earlier. The position I'm running for is a 2-year position. And if I win or lose, I'd have to run again 2 years later if I wanted to stay in it, right?
Yeah.
There are things going on in our country right now, and I don't mean to scare you, but they terrify me. Have you all seen Project 2025?
Yeah.
Oh my
Don't get me
goodness
started on that.
gracious.
Yeah,
Whoa,
I know
my
about
God.
that.
Because I'm sorry.
No.
Keep
So
going.
No,
so
yeah.
one of the things Project 25 talks about
Mhm.
Yeah.
is getting rid of the Department of Education.
Yeah.
That's so like they want education, but now they're taking it. Like I'm like,
No,
I
this-
know.
they don't want education. They want to get rid of it.
no, I was talking about like never mind. Anyway.
Well, so there is a very immediate factor
Mhm.
that if the House of Representatives can be more Democrats than Republicans,
Mhm.
it's a vote against that. Bills that tax our country start in the House by law, by the Constitution.
Mhm.
So if we're going to talk about how our systems are changing, we need to have a majority of Democrats in the House of Representatives to block things like Project 2025. They want to get
Right.
rid of the Inflation Reduction Act, the thing that I talked about that's bringing money back into our community, bringing back to environmental justice. If you don't have a majority in the House or Senate, the laws will change to get rid of things that stop climate change. So I will say that again. If we don't have a majority in the House or Senate, the laws will change to make climate change worse. That is what is on the table right now.
Oh, man.
Now, that doesn't mean I can go in and personally do whatever I want. And this is the frustrating part for young people, because you might think, well, we elected you to champion and solve the world's problem. I can't promise I'm going to solve anything.
Mhm.
I can promise you I'm going to work on it. And so having another vote gets us more likely to get closer to the things we need, but it requires passing legislation. So I'll give you just one example. When you talk about affordable housing, we have, think of it like a bell curve. We have a bell curve of housing that we built in terms of how expensive it is. The problem is the bell curve of what people can afford, they're not in sync.
Mm.
We're building housing that might be $200-300 in Wyandotte County, but most people can't afford $200,000 to $300,000 in Wyandotte County.
Yeah.
We need to get them back in sync. And one way to do that for first-time home buyers, there's a program called the FHA loan. It helps reduce the cost of your down payment. For you all, and this is something I'm scared about, but for you all, I own a home. For you all, owning a home may be out of reach if we don't do real federal policy change. And so one thing that we can do is create an insurance pool so that if you all need that down payment, instead of saving 5-10%, maybe you save 1%. And then there's an insurance that covers it for the rest. And if you ever lose your job, maybe there's another insurance pool that says you lost your job. Well, insurance is going to cover you for the next 3 months to get back on your feet. As opposed to you lost your job, now you're on the street because you got evicted from your apartment or your home got foreclosed on because you couldn't make payments.
Mhm.
We have tools at our disposal through things like the FHA program, Federal Housing Administration, that can make housing more affordable and prevent people from being displaced. But we have to pass the laws to do that, and to do that, we need a majority. So this is why voting is critical for the rest of your lives. I think y'all need to make sure that you understand that you cannot skip an election. Because whether it's climate change, whether it's housing, whether it's homelessness, whether it's food access, whatever it is, we cannot skip elections. We have more Democrats in the north half of Wyandotte County who skipped one of the last 3 elections than there are Democrats in all of southeast Kansas combined. A lot of people stay home because they don't feel like their voice matters. And the reality is when you stay home, your voice does not matter. We need people to turn out to vote. Whether you're Democrat or Republican, we need people to turn out to vote. And especially young people once you get old enough to vote. So I'm looking forward to the first election y'all have, because that's when your voice will start to make a bigger impact.
All right. So, what are some struggles that you personally find hard to face?
Ooh. I think y'all have boyfriends or girlfriends?
No.
You got a significant other?
No.
So my wife and I, we chose Wyandotte County. I'm not adopt by birth. I'm adopt by choice. But one of the reasons I got involved in politics, people always say why, and there's a lot of reasons. I could give you stories. But my wife was born in India. She immigrated here when she was 2 years old.
Oh, I've seen her.
Wow.
She grew up in poverty. She lived in Torrance, California. Her family had to move to Canada for a little bit of time, and they eventually became citizens when she was 18. She's much more smart and prettier. Not as tall, but she's tall. Like she's great. And I remember in 2016 when Trump got elected, and I have this saying I have that things have a way of working out. It's sort of my like coping mechanism. You know, if things are good, great. That's how they worked out. If things are bad, we'll figure out a way to make them work out.
Right. Yeah.
And I looked over at her and I was like, things have a way of working out. And she's got tears coming down her face. And she said, no, you don't understand. They'll work out for you. But my family, me, this is going to be a tough 4 years. And it was that moment that I realized that I had a lot of privilege, right? I'm a straight, white, Christian, tall guy living in KU basketball country in Kansas where I grew up. And I realized that I had to come to terms with, I have advantages, but how do I use them? How do I put them in service to people? How do I help people get access to the things they need? And so one of the challenges I have right now is both understanding how to do that most effectively and not, you talk about mental health, not allowing myself to get so demoralized if things don't go my way. A big part of a job of a candidate, unfortunately, is asking people for money. And you ask them for money because I need to get the word out about who I am. There's over 500,000 people in this district. How do you get the word out? You need people to see television ads or Facebook ads or flyers in their door, but that costs money. And so I got to go up there and ask people, hey, would you give me money so I can tell more people who I am? And if somebody says no, I can get really defeated. I can like kind of curl up in a ball and be like, well, maybe they don't like me. Maybe I'm not doing the right thing. And then I come back to that space of, no, I'm advocating for my family. I'm advocating for everyone's family in Wyandotte County because we need more access to resources. And folks who don't experience Wyandotte County the way we do don't know what that's like. And so the toughest thing for me is just keeping my head above water, making sure that I'm moving forward, making sure that I'm not allowing myself to get slowed down because I know that it's more than just me. And that's the toughest thing.
All right. So what motivates you to keep on going? Like whether it's like your wife or that saying, what was that saying you said? Like it will eventually work out.
Things have a way of working out. Yeah. Yeah. I am inherently an optimist.
Oh, okay.
I think that when you put in the work and when you care about people, there are ways that things get better. Now, that is said, like I said earlier, with a lot of privilege. But I do think that what gives me hope and momentum is I see people organizing. I see people doing the work. I see people making things better, even at a small scale. There's a famous organizer, Fannie Lou Hamer, who says, who we are at a small scale is who we are at a large scale. And I think as a country, there's a lot to learn from Wyandotte County. Wyandotte County, with all of its structural challenges, is a great community. It's a community that I have invested my life into. And it's because of the people. It's because people like you all sitting here having a show talking about these issues. And I think those are the things that, yeah, things may not be right now, but let's keep doing the work. Let's keep planting seeds. Let's keep cultivating our next generation. Let's keep building relationships so that maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but 10, 20 years from now, y'all will inherit a world that's a little bit better. And I think that gives me momentum because I actually believe that that's possible.
All right.
I don't know if you answered this, and I apologize if you did, but like, how do you manage your mental health with like the stress of Congress, like your personal life, and just like in general?
So when I announced I was running, I had a conversation with Representative Sharice Davids, and her number one piece of recommendation for me, and this is true for young people too, is get enough sleep. Oh. She said it to me. She's like, you don't understand that you will get run ragged if you're not careful. You will be on the move, on the call, on the phone, on the Zoom, out and driving to the next event all day long, every day. Getting enough sleep is something I've been trying to prioritize. You know, not staying up on my phone, getting off social media, getting off that stuff. I think that's actually healthy. I don't think as people we're meant to be on social media as much as we are. I think that's actually something that I've grown to learn is it's dangerous for us. It's sort of like alcohol or tobacco. A little bit of something in moderation, all right, but too much, it's deadly, and it's deadly to our sense of identity and sense of self. So I've tried to do my best to keep myself away from that. Man, I grew up playing video games. I don't play as much as I can or like to, but every now and then, if I can just unwind and check out for a second. I play video games that build cities and towns and things like that. It sort of taps into my architecture side. And then I'd walk my dogs. I'd take my dogs on walks. I'd take them down to dog parks all the time. And just having a dog, when somebody can give you unconditional love and they're furry and cute, it's like a release valve for stress.
Yep.
So those are the things that I do to relax.
Right.
Yeah. So how has family like supported you through your whole journey from like when you was a kid to now?
I wouldn't be here if I didn't have family supporting the journey.
Yeah.
When I got recruited to play basketball, Coach Mo might not know this one. I was asked to walk on at North Carolina, and I was gonna go play for Roy Williams. And my older brother said, Matt, you go play there. You're gonna be, on a national championship team probably, and get to hang out with Michael Jordan every 5 to 10 years. And I thought that sounds amazing. I'd love to do that, but I couldn't afford it. It was out-of-state tuition. Walk-ons aren't given scholarships. I got recruited to go to Yale. Yale asked me to go to Yale to play basketball. Yeah, I'm like, that's great. And I think the cost of tuition was like $200,000. And this is back in 2004 money. That's a lot of money.
Oh, so now it's probably like
That's a lot more.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do that either. But when KU came knocking, and KU's like, hey, we want you to walk on at KU, in-state tuition, it's a lot, but it's not that much compared to like North Carolina, compared to Yale. So my parents stepped up and said, look, we'll help you through it. I got a scholarship for 1 year when I was there, and then they took it away because of a penalty from years before I ever went. But my parents helped me get a college degree. And, they've been there for me every step of the way. My brother, is an older brother, not as tall as me, but he's a former FBI agent, SEC, the Security Exchange Commission. He's one of the smartest people I know. I got a little sister who just got a maternal fetal medicine degree. So she does maternal health care for mothers who are in high-risk pregnancies. And so she helps take care of women. And I just learned so much from her and her perspective on that. I know in Wyandotte County, we have really high black maternal health care issues. We have really bad system nationwide, but especially in that space. And so I've done some works with some groups on that, but I learned from my family. I'm blessed to have them. My wife's family is incredible. Her parents grew up in India in an arranged marriage. And when we met, I can tell you my parents and her parents on the other side of the planet from each other, but they had the same sort of values, the same sort of what they cared about, what we should as kids grow up with. And so I'm very fortunate to my family. They've helped me succeed, and they've also been a blessing in my life.
Right. So I remember you were saying like when Trump got elected, you saw like your wife in tears. Because I think, because we were talking about immigration, because I too come from an immigration family. So what's something that the youth can do, or not just the youth, like adults as well, because we talk about like immigration laws and like we talk about serious topics like that. So what's something that we can do to like make sure our voices are heard? Like, is there like a website or like a program we can go to, or is there like a program that you're involved in that like you said you go to like from school to school to like hear our voices?
So there are things you can do. I would first start with where you are.
Okay.
Whether it's your school, whether it's your sports team, whether it's your church group, there are folks in your community who care, but you have to talk about it. You have to have that conversation with them.
Yeah.
There are groups in Kansas, in Wyandotte County, who care. I personally started attending meetings with a group called the Voter Rights Network of Wyandotte County. And we were given testimony about how bad it was that they gerrymandered Wyandotte County out of Representative Sharice David's district. And so they would inform me on what was going on the state legislation level. They would tell me, hey, this bill's coming down the pipeline. People need to show up and vote against it. People need to show up and give testimony against it. And so I think there are ways that young people can get engaged, but it's going to be different for everybody. What I would encourage young people broadly to do is become an informed news consumer. And what I mean by that is TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, a lot of that stuff is not true. Not that it's not always true, but sometimes it can be manipulated. Sometimes it can spin you down a road that you need to verify it.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean don't be on it, but it means learn how to look up a second source. Learn how to go to a source that's maybe not biased. Don't believe everything you read, but be an informed news consumer. Take in different sources. Listen to radio news. Listen to, TV news is okay, but really like spend time with like what are established, trusted news sources, so that for the rest of your life, you're not thinking the way that somebody wants you to think. That you have the skills to kind of filter out the noise and really focus on what's going on in the world. And I think the more active you are in your community, you will find opportunities to get aligned with different groups. But there's no silver bullet. Right, it's a lifetime of learning and being curious about the world, but also taking the time to get to know your neighbors.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I was reading that you're big on women's rights and human rights. So my question for you is, what do you believe are the most pressing issues facing women's rights and human rights today?
So I'll take the women's rights one first and the human rights second. On women's rights specifically, I firmly disagree with the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. I think the Dobbs decision was wrong. And they, as a Supreme Court, there's sort of a guiding doctrine of how they make decisions. And they threw all that out. They threw all of that out to get rid of the right to an abortion as an act of privacy. We have unenumerated rights in this country. When you look at the Constitution, it might not say that we have this and that right. But over time, we have found that certain rights that we do have in certain contexts extend. And in women's rights, it's privacy. We should not allow politicians to be in the hospital rooms making decisions about women's bodies. Full stop. What's that?
I said absolutely.
Absolutely. And I find it incredible that a party of small government wants a government so big that it can do that. And so I think that we need to reinstate Roe v. Wade, but it's not just abortion access. More than that, it's contraceptions and IVF. There is a push back to Project 2025 to make it so that you can't start a family through IVF. You can't use contraception because they don't want you to. They want to control your body. And I think that's wrong. As a government, we should not do that. On human rights, I'm most concerned with the LGBTQ community. There is an attack on LGBTQ rights. Obergefell was a decision the Supreme Court made. It was unenumerated rights that people have a right to marry who they want to marry. That is under attack. If you read the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision that killed it in Dobbs, they said, we're going to go after this one next. We're going to go after this one next. The one that I'm most worried about, my wife and I are only married by law since the 1960s in a case called Loving v. Virginia, which allowed for interracial marriage to happen. It struck down miscegenation laws. Our own marriage is under threat because the Supreme Court wants to get rid of anything that wasn't clearly said in the Constitution. And I think it's a radical interpretation of our country. It's scary for a lot of us, and I think it's wrong. So I think there are ways that we can stand up for that, but we have to do things like pass laws that codify Roe v. Wade. That means we have to pass a law in Congress that legislates these are the things we care about, and we're going to pass this through a majority in the House and Senate. So those are the things when we talk about protecting rights, we can do that so we don't have to rely upon a Supreme Court that right now is too far extreme and it's out of touch with America.
I'm really sorry. I love talking with you. I
Don't
wish
be
we
sorry.
could have hours to talk, cause what you do, I'm really intrigued, and like I love what you're saying, especially about women's rights, especially about human, especially about the kids with mental health. I love it all, but I'm sorry, but other than that, I really love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, y'all keep doing what y'all doing, and you'll be in this chair, and you'll have young people interviewing you in 20 years.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, but the young people looking up to me, that's nice.
Oh, because as of right now, I want people to look up to me. Because, like, being in a headspace where, like, it's just hard, you know? But it's like, we got connections to help the youth, and, yeah. So, bye, you guys. I'm Queen Vaughn.
I'm Rogelio.
And we're with Jenna Talk. For youth, by youth. We out here.